Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. On our wedding anniversary, in front of everyone, my wife turned to me, stared straight into my eyes and said, "I truly wish I had never married you." My world instantly collapsed in silence. The next morning, she disappeared, taking our savings with her. But I didn't cry, and I didn't chase after her, because in that moment, I realized the war had only just begun. When Vanessa said those words, we were standing in our own living room, surrounded by over 40 friends, colleagues, and family members. She was holding a champagne flute, wearing a deep blue silk dress, looking as elegant and poised as she did at any gallery opening. The music was still playing. The table was filled with food we had carefully prepared. This was our third wedding anniversary celebration party, and I had just finished thanking everyone for coming. Then she turned to me and spoke those words in a voice I had never heard before. Not a whisper, not a cry, just a calm statement, like saying nice weather today. The room fell silent instantly. The music was still playing, but the sound seemed to become very distant. Someone's glass stopped midair. Someone's smile froze on their face. I saw my colleague Derek's mouth hanging open, and Vanessa's friend Helena's eyes flashed with an indescribable expression. Not shock, but more like satisfaction, as if she had known this scene would happen all along and had finally waited for it. Vanessa put down her champagne glass. The glass lightly touched the marble countertop, making a crisp sound. She walked past me, and I smelled her perfume, the one I bought her, a bottle for $120, which she said made her feel elegant. She walked straight to the door and picked up the handbag that had been placed by the entrance. She didn't look back, didn't explain, just left her own home under everyone's gaze. The sound of high heels on the wooden floor, the door opening and closing, then silence. I stood there, feeling my face burning, my ears buzzing. 40 people, 80 eyes, all looking at me. Several people tried to comfort me. My sister's friend Camille patted my shoulder and said, "She must be under too much stress." My colleague Garrett came over and handed me a glass of water. But their words sounded distant, as if through a thick pane of glass. I don't remember how I sent the guests away. I only remember the expressions on everyone's faces as they left. Sympathy, embarrassment, curiosity, and that excitement of having watched a good show. The last to leave was Vanessa's college roommate Sloane, who looked back at me when she reached the door, opened her mouth to say something, but in the end said nothing and just shook her head. In that moment, I knew. This wasn't a sudden breakdown, this was scripted. They all knew, or at least some of them knew, what would happen tonight. That night, Vanessa didn't come back. She didn't call, didn't text, nothing. I sat at the kitchen counter, looking at the table full of uneaten food, looking at the champagne glass she left behind with her lipstick still on the rim. I tried to understand what had just happened. At 2 a.m., I finally figured out one thing. Normal people don't do this. Normal people having conflicts would close the door and fight, throw things, cry, scream, say, "Let's talk." But they wouldn't perform a carefully orchestrated humiliation in front of 40 people. Unless they needed these witnesses. Unless they were paving the way for something bigger. She needed everyone to remember this moment. She needed everyone to think I was an abandoned, pitiful, emotionally unstable husband. The question was, why? When dawn broke, my grief had turned into something else. Colder, more sober, more useful. I opened my laptop. My fingers paused on the keyboard for a second, then logged into our joint account. The moment the page loaded, my stomach tightened. Account balance, $847.32. Yesterday morning, it had been $46,284. I checked the transaction records and found 3 transfers made 2 hours before the party started. $15,000, $15,000, $15,200. All transferred to an account under a company name I didn't recognize. Cascade Holdings, LLC. This wasn't impulse, this was planning. While we were still setting up the party, cutting fruit, arranging plates, she was transferring funds one by one. Probably sitting in the upstairs study, listening to the sounds of me and Garrett moving tables downstairs, clicking Confirm Transfer. I checked our savings account, $2,341, originally $18,000. I checked my personal checking account. Fortunately, $4,200, untouched. That was my salary account, only in my name. All joint accounts had been emptied. A total of about $62,000 transferred away. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't contacted in 3 months. Rowan. Sterling's voice was full of surprise and sleepiness. Do you know what time it is? I need you to come over, I said, my voice sounding calm. Now, right now. What happened? Vanessa. There was 2 seconds of silence on the other end of the phone. I'll be there in 20 minutes. An hour later, my brother stood at my door, holding 2 convenience store coffees and a laptop bag. Sterling was 34, 3 years older than me, wearing a wrinkled black t-shirt and jeans, eyes red from staying up late. He worked in cybersecurity. I never fully understood exactly what he did, only that he found vulnerabilities for companies during the day and did projects he never explained in detail at night. We'd never had a great relationship. To be exact, he couldn't stand Vanessa, thought she was too pretentious, too performative, like an actor who's always performing. We'd fought about it several times. The worst was a month before my wedding when he said, "Are you sure you know her?" And I said, "You're just jealous I found true love." After that, we basically only saw each other at Thanksgiving, and that required my mom to maintain surface peace. Now thinking back, maybe he saw something I didn't see. I told him what happened last night, without any embellishment, just like stating a work report. After listening, he was silent for a long time, taking a sip of his now cold coffee. "They're building a file on you," he finally said, looking into my eyes, "shaping you into an abandoned, emotionally unstable husband. When they need it, this persona will come in handy." Need what? I don't know. Sterling put down his coffee cup. But we need to find out. Where are your home network devices? Router, server, everything. I took him to the study. The router was under the desk, a small black box with blinking green indicator lights. Next to it was a larger device, a NAS storage server that Vanessa said she needed to store high-resolution images and video files from her gallery. I almost never touched it, didn't even know its admin password. Sterling connected his own laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard. The screen jumped with code and command lines I couldn't understand at all. His brow furrowed more and more. "Your media server is partitioned," he said, eyes not leaving the screen. "There's an encrypted partition. Did you know?" "No." 250 gigabytes capacity, he typed a few lines of commands, and there's an automatic backup program running. My heart started racing. Backing up what? Phone data, he paused, fingers stopping on the keyboard. Her phone, complete data mirror from 3 months ago. I walked over and stood behind him. The screen displayed a list of encrypted files. Why would she back it up? Could be an operational error, Sterling said. Or maybe she wanted to keep certain data but didn't want it on her phone. Either way, she forgot to delete it. "Can you open it?" He turned to look at me. "Legally, this is..." She just stole over $60,000 from me, humiliated me in front of 40 people, then disappeared. I interrupted him. "Do you think I still care about legal gray areas?" Sterling nodded. "Give me 20 minutes. Actually, it took him 17 minutes. The encryption wasn't complex, he said. She probably thought it was safe enough on a server in her own home. When the folder opened, we saw hundreds of files. Photos, documents, PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, and a folder labeled "Messages are encrypted." "Where do we start?" I asked. "Start with the most suspicious." Sterling opened a folder named Client _. Inside was an Excel spreadsheet. At first glance, it looked normal, like any gallery would have for client records. Names, contact information, purchase records, dates. But when I looked carefully at the numbers, my breathing stopped for a beat. The smallest amount was $52,000. The largest was $340,000. Page after page, dozens of clients, each purchasing at least $50,000 worth of art. The last column of the spreadsheet was labeled Status, most marked as complete or processed. This doesn't look like normal gallery business, I said, my voice quiet. It doesn't? Sterling scrolled down. The numbers kept jumping. What's your wife's gallery's annual revenue? She told me around 200,000 to 300,000. She said the gallery business was difficult. Profit margins were thin. This is over $1 million in 1 month. He pointed to the date column on the screen. This is the past 6 months of records. Total. He did quick mental math. Nearly 4.5 million. The room suddenly fell quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat. Keep looking, I said. We continued searching. In the photos_backup folder, we found a series of photos, all taken late at night. Vanessa and her brother Dominic standing outside a warehouse, next to a parked black SUV. The photo timestamp showed 2:38 a.m. There were more photos. Different locations, different times, but all late at night or early morning. All Vanessa and Dominic meeting in various remote places. In one photo, Dominic was carrying a large box from the car, and from his bent posture, the box was heavy. In another photo, they were standing in front of a shipping container, Dominic taking photos with his phone. She's having an affair, I heard myself say, my voice calm, as if talking about someone else's story. She and her brother, Rowan. Sterling interrupted me. Look at this. He opened a text file in the messages_encrypted folder. It was chat records from the phone, already exported to plain text format. The conversation partner was noted as M. Goods arrived. Cleaning Thursday. Vanessa. Client confirmed? M. Confirmed. Using channel B. Same as always. Vanessa. That auditor thing handled? Handled. He took the money and shut up. There was more. Vanessa. Did Rowan sign? M. Signed. Didn't ask anything. Vanessa. Good. Proceed according to plan. M. You sure he won't find out? Vanessa. No, he only cares about his code and design, knows nothing about finances. M. About the anniversary thing. Vanessa. Already arranged. Everyone will remember that scene. I felt the room spinning. This isn't an affair, Sterling said, his voice serious. This is crime. Money laundering, Rowan. Your wife is laundering money. I stared at the words on the screen, my brain racing, piecing together fragments from the past 3 years. Vanessa was always secretive about our home finances, saying I didn't understand how the art market works, saying I didn't need to worry about these things. We had some joint business accounts. She said it was for gallery tax optimization. I'd signed some documents. When she brought them over, she was always casual, just routine annual statements, just bank-required information updates. I trusted her, so I never looked closely, just signed and continued writing code. I need to see those documents, I told Sterling. The ones I signed. We searched for another half hour. In a folder named legal_docs. We found them. Registration documents for 3 LLCs, founded 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and 10 months ago, respectively. Each document had my signature. Company names: Cascade Holdings LLC, Evergreen Art Investments LLC, Pacific Gallery Services LLC. Legal representative: Rowan Mitchell. Me. Registered address: my home address. Did you know what you were signing? Sterling asked, but he already knew the answer. I thought they were gallery operating documents, I said, my voice quiet. She said she needed me as a joint signatory, said it made tax filing more convenient. Sterling didn't speak, just continued scrolling down. Each company had bank accounts. Each account had large amounts of money flowing in and out. The Excel spreadsheet showed that over the past 2 years, these 3 companies had processed over $8 million in funds. We need a lawyer, Sterling said. Now. Immediately. Not an ordinary divorce lawyer, the kind who understands financial crimes. Sarah Chen's office was on the 12th floor of an old building downtown, with a window overlooking the distant bay and docks. She was in her 40s, wearing a well-tailored dark gray suit, with short, professional hair and direct speech. After I briefly explained the situation on the phone, she immediately said, "Come over right away. Bring all your financial documents. Now she sat behind her desk, carefully reviewing all the materials Sterling and I had brought. She looked at every document, every photo, every chat record. Throughout the process, she didn't speak, only occasionally took notes. Half an hour later, she put down the last document and looked at me. "Rowan," she said, her tone serious, "do you understand your current situation?" "I think I do," I said, "but I want to hear you say it. If the FBI or IRS gets involved in investigating this money laundering network now, the first person to be subpoenaed will be you." Sarah opened her notebook and showed me the list she'd made. "You are the legal representative of 3 LLCs. Your signature is on all registration documents. You have joint accounts with Vanessa. You live at the company's registered address. On paper, you're the person in charge of these companies." "But I didn't know anything." "I believe you," Sarah said, "but you have to prove it to prosecutors, judges, and juries, and your wife is building evidence to the contrary." "What do you mean?" "She publicly humiliated you on your wedding anniversary, in front of 40 witnesses." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "When you're investigated in the future, all these people will testify about what they saw. A man with a broken marriage, a husband abandoned by his wife, emotionally unstable, possibly doing irrational things. If you're later accused of being involved in money laundering, they'll remember that scene and think, 'Oh, no wonder his wife left him, he must have problems.'" She paused, letting the information sink in. "She's labeling you, Rowan, shaping you into an unreliable, problematic person. So when she pushes the responsibility onto you, everyone will believe her." I felt my stomach churning. "There's worse," Sarah continued. "According to these chat records, they may already be preparing the final blow. Proceed according to plan. Everyone will remember that scene. This isn't a simple divorce, Rowan. This is a carefully planned scapegoating. She's preparing to complete one last big deal, then make you take the fall and disappear completely." "What can we do?" Sterling asked. Sarah thought for a moment, fingers lightly tapping on the desk. "First, we need to protect Rowan. We need to prove he was unaware that he was being used. I'll help you prepare a complete statement, documenting your knowledge of all financial transactions, or rather lack thereof. And then, she looked at us, we need to collect enough evidence to strike preemptively before they complete their plan. But we must be careful." "Careful about what?" "The legality of the evidence," Sarah said. "The data you've seen now was obtained from a server in Rowan's home. Legally, this is in a gray area. Rowan has the right to access equipment in his own home, but Vanessa also has privacy rights. If we directly give this to law enforcement, the evidence's legality might be questioned." "So what do we do?" I asked. "We need to convert this information into legal leads," Sarah explained. "Through this data, you know what they're doing and where. Now we need to find other ways to prove the same facts. Public records, documents you legally own, evidence that can guide the investigation without its source being questioned. We give law enforcement a map, but don't tell them how the map was made." Sterling nodded. "I understand. We find public breadcrumbs, enough for them to apply for a search warrant. Then they find the real evidence through legal channels." "Exactly," Sarah said. "But time is limited. If they've already started abandoning Rowan, it means their plan is entering its final stage. We must act before they finish." "How long will it take?" I asked. "If fast, 2 weeks. If slow, a month," Sarah said. "But first, you need to do one thing." "What?" "Play dumb," she said, eyes sharp. "Play the role she wants you to play. A broken, emotionally out-of-control husband trying to win her back. Let her lower her guard." For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. On the surface, I was a broken husband. I sent Vanessa several text messages, tone humble and desperate. "Can we talk? I don't understand what happened. I love you, please come back. I can change. Tell me what I did wrong." She didn't reply to any of them. I posted a photo from our wedding on Instagram, captioned "Missing who we used to be." I deliberately made myself look unshaven, wore wrinkled t-shirts to the convenience store, bought a bunch of beer and frozen pizzas. letting the cashier and other customers see my decadent appearance. I knew this was a small city. The news would get back to Vanessa's social circle. At the company, I told colleagues Vanessa and I are having some problems. Speaking with deliberate exhaustion, I made myself look like a man going through a marital crisis, just the right amount of disheveled, just the right amount of helpless. But every night, when it got dark, I drove to Sterling's apartment. We would work until 3 a.m., sometimes until dawn. Sterling found a vulnerability in the gallery website server, an outdated WordPress plugin with known security flaws that had never been updated. Typical small business problem, he said. They spend big money decorating the storefront but ignore the technical infrastructure. He planted a monitoring program disguised as a normal system log file. This was absolutely illegal technically, but Sarah was right. We needed to know what they were doing to know where to find legal evidence. We began to see the full picture of the transactions, and it was bigger and more complex than we imagined. The gallery was indeed selling art. The website had an online catalog, photos from openings, artist profiles. But the prices were completely unreasonable. An abstract painting by a local artist, similar work sold for $2,000 to $3,000 at other galleries, was priced at $38,000 at Vanessa's gallery. A young sculptor's work, market price maybe $5,000, priced at $62,000. The buyers were all companies, not individuals. Sterling Investments LLC, Cascade Partners LP, Harbor Holdings Inc. We checked the registration information for these companies, all shell companies, registered addresses in Delaware or Nevada, no actual offices, no employees, just a P.O. box. Money flowed into the gallery's account. The gallery paid artist fees and operating costs, and most of the remaining profit looked clean. Classic trade-based money laundering, Sterling said. As we stared at the money flow diagram on his laptop, the art market is already opaque. Prices can be set arbitrarily. No standards, no regulation, perfect money laundering tool. They use this to wash dirty money clean. Where does this money come from? Don't know, Sterling said. But with this scale, the source definitely isn't clean. We discovered Dominic ran a logistics company called Evergreen Logistics, claiming to provide art transportation and storage services. But according to his Instagram location tags, he had precise location turned off, but we could see general areas. His transportation routes didn't make any commercial sense. He would drive to industrial areas in the suburbs, stay for 20 to 30 minutes, then come directly back, never going to any galleries, collector homes, or art institutions. He's not transporting paintings, I said. No, Sterling agreed. But we need to prove it. The answer came suddenly, on the 11th day of monitoring the gallery's email system. That night it was already 1 a.m. I was helping Sterling organize data, making all the company registrations, money flows, and transaction records into a visual timeline. I used my UI design skills to turn the complex money laundering network into a clear chart, using different colors to mark money flows, arrows to show relationships. Sterling's computer suddenly chimed. New email, he said, opening the message. The sender was Vanessa. The recipient was an email address saved as Dad. The subject line was Collection Event, November 15th. Dad, exhibition preparations are underway. Client list confirmed, 12 buyers, all regulars. This is our biggest cleaning of the year. Expected to process $2.3 million in inventory. Venue booked, invitations sent. Dominic will handle logistics for the night. Will operate according to standard procedure. Documents and funds will be processed within 48 hours after the event. Rowan's situation handled cleanly, won't be a problem. His current state is just as we expected, completely broken. Even if he suspects something, no one will believe an abandoned, emotionally out-of-control husband. Everything ready. See you November 15th. I stared at the screen, feeling my hands trembling. Not from fear, but from anger. 3 years. I was married to this woman for 3 years, thinking we were building a future together, thinking we were a team. Turns out from day one, I was just a tool, a clean shell, used to cover her family's crimes. We need to stop this, I said. No, Sterling turned to look at me. We let it happen. What? If they pull off this final deal, they'll have $2.3 million in clean money and solid evidence showing the operation works. Then they'll leave. Vanessa will divorce you, blame everything on you, and disappear with the money. By the time law enforcement investigates, you'll be the only name on all those company documents. He leaned forward, eyes bright. But if we let them have this exhibition, get everything ready, gather all the participants, and then have law enforcement raid it, we catch them red-handed. Not just Vanessa, but her father, Dominic, all the buyers, everyone involved. The entire network, in one strike. I understood what he meant. How do we make sure law enforcement is there at the right time? We tell them when and where, Sterling said. We give them enough evidence to get a search warrant. Then we let them do their job. I nodded slowly. Call Sarah. The next 3 days we worked around the clock. We compiled everything into a comprehensive package. My bank statements showing my actual income and spending level, my legal documents. A detailed timeline showing when I signed what documents and how Vanessa explained them at the time. My personal records. Those backup files found on the home server, technically obtained from shared equipment in my home, in a legal gray area, but at least not hacking. Most importantly, the visualization charts Sterling and I created. We turned complex money flows, company connections, and abnormal transaction patterns into clear diagrams. This wasn't the evidence itself. This was a map telling investigators where to dig and what they would find. After Sarah reviewed it, she nodded. Good, she said. This is enough. A former colleague of mine is in the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. They specialize in money laundering cases. Compared to the FBI, the IRS tends to be more cautious, more focused on evidence quality, but once they decide to file a case, the success rate is extremely high. Will they be interested? I asked. They will, Sarah was certain. You know what kind of tip the IRS likes best? Not vague accusations, but clear, detailed tips with specific leads like this. You've basically done 90% of the preliminary investigation work. She picked up the phone. I'll contact them now. 5 days later, Sarah received a reply. The IRS Criminal Investigation Division was highly interested in the case and had formed a task force. They used the leads we provided to apply for search warrants and began investigating those shell companies' bank records. 3 more days passed and Sarah called to tell me, they found it. There's even more evidence than what you discovered. This isn't just money laundering, it also involves tax evasion, fraud, and possibly other crimes. They'll act at that November 15th event. Can I go? I asked. You should go, Sarah said. But you can't go inside. Stand on the perimeter. Be present when the police act. 2 benefits. 1, it shows you're not an accomplice, you're the whistleblower. 2, let her see you. Let her know you did this. November 15th was a Friday. That week, I went to work at the company normally every day, continued posting decadent photos on Instagram, continued playing a broken husband. No one knew what I was doing at night. That evening, I wore a thick coat because the weather forecast said it would get cold. Sterling drove. We arrived at the galleries block at 6:30 p.m. The event was scheduled to start at 7 p.m. We parked 2 blocks away and walked over. Outside the gallery hung a banner, Private Collection Exhibition. Security at the door checked invitations. Guests arrived one after another, all well-dressed successful people, driving Autis, BMWs, Teslas. I recognized some faces. People from Vanessa's father's social circle. A few I'd seen at the anniversary party. They were all smiling, chatting, holding champagne flutes, like attending any high-end social event. At 7:15, Vanessa appeared at the door. She wore a black evening gown, hair pinned up, diamond earrings sparkling under the lights. She stood at the door greeting the last few guests, smile elegant, manner graceful. From this distance, she was exactly the same as the woman who said those words in our home 3 weeks ago. Elegant, confident, in control, the successful woman in everyone's eyes. She didn't look nervous at all. I thought she never imagined this day would come. She was too confident, so confident she never thought I could discover the truth, much less fight back. In her eyes, I was just that guy who only wrote code, knew nothing about business, a perfect tool and scapegoat, use and discard. She was wrong. "They're here," Sterling said, voice low. I saw 4 unmarked black SUVs turn the corner, slowly and unobtrusively parking near the gallery. Doors opened, plainclothes agents stepped out. They looked like ordinary business people, but I could see the badges and guns at their waists. At 7:30, after all the guests had entered, the agents moved. They didn't break down the door, didn't shout, just calmly walked into the gallery, showed the search warrant, and announced everyone must stay in place. I couldn't see the details inside, but I could imagine. Music suddenly stopped, conversation abruptly ceased, everyone frozen in place. Champagne still bubbling on tables, paintings still smiling on walls, and everyone's face filled with panic. About 15 minutes later, more vehicles arrived. Vehicles with IRS logos and local police cars. Another 30 minutes passed, they started bringing people out. First were several men and women I didn't recognize, probably those buyers. They were guided one by one to police cars, not handcuffed, but clearly being controlled and questioned. Then Dominic, his hands cuffed behind his back, face ashen, escorted by 2 agents toward an SUV. Then Vanessa's father, a man in his 60s with graying hair, wearing an expensive suit. He tried to maintain dignity while walking, but the handcuffs made it all look ridiculous. Finally, Vanessa, her hands cuffed behind her back, the evening gown's hem dragging on the ground. A female agent held her arm, guiding her toward a waiting vehicle. Her hair was a bit messy, diamond earrings still sparkling, but the elegance and confidence on her face had completely disappeared, replaced by shock and disbelief. When she reached the gallery entrance, she raised her head. She saw me. I stood across the street, under a streetlight, about 50 meters away. I wore that thick coat, hands in pockets, just watching her. Our eyes met. I saw her expression change. First confusion, then surprise at recognizing me, then something approaching fear. Her lips moved, as if saying something, but no sound carried over. She finally understood. It wasn't police appearing out of nowhere, wasn't bad luck being caught. It was me. That tool person in her eyes, that technical nerd who knows nothing about finances. That husband who should be broken, decadent, waiting to be framed and jailed, personally dug out the truth, personally sent her into the cage. She opened her mouth wide, as if wanting to shout something, but the female agent gently pushed her shoulder, guiding her into the car. The car door closed, engine started, the car drove away. I didn't move. I didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't do anything. I just watched that car disappear around the corner, watched the red taillights grow more and more distant, until completely out of sight. Sterling came over and patted my shoulder. "Let's go," he said, voice soft. We turned and left without looking back. The next few months were a series of legal proceedings. The night the search warrant was executed, the IRS seized a large amount of evidence. Computer hard drives, financial documents, contract documents, and a safe full of cash containing $340,000. They extracted all transaction records from the gallery's server, found more chat records and photos from Dominic's phone, and searched out a ledger from Vanessa's father's office that detailed the source and destination of every business transaction. The prosecutor took 3 weeks to organize the evidence, then formally indicted 15 people. Vanessa, her father Victor, and Dominic were the core defendants. The others were buyers who participated in money laundering and some accountants and lawyers who helped them operate. Charges included money laundering, tax fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, and one I hadn't expected at all: identity theft. Because they had forged my signature on documents I had never seen. Media reports came out quickly. Local gallery exposed for $8 million money laundering, criminal empire behind art transactions. Prosecutor calls this the state's largest money laundering case in nearly a decade. My name didn't appear in the news. Sarah ensured that. The media only said a victim reported it. 2 months later, the preliminary hearing began. I walked into court for the first time, sitting in the gallery. Vanessa sat in the defendant's seat, wearing a dark suit, hair simply tied back, no makeup. She looked more unfamiliar than any version I had known. The judge asked how she pleaded. "Not guilty," she said, voice calm, but her lawyer knew how solid the evidence was. Over the next 3 months, they kept trying to reach a plea deal, hoping to reduce the sentence. The prosecutor was unmoved. The evidence was too sufficient, the timeline too clear, too many participants involved. This case was ironclad. As a victim and key witness, I was subpoenaed to testify. It was on a Wednesday in May, spring sunlight streaming through the courthouse's high windows. The prosecutor was a woman in her 40s named Jennifer Harris, who spoke crisply and efficiently. "Mr. Mitchell," she asked, "please tell the jury when you first suspected your wife was using you." I looked at the jury, 12 strangers, 12 serious faces. On our wedding anniversary, when she said those words in front of 40 people, I said, keeping my voice steady, "Normal people don't do that. They only do it when they need witnesses." She needed everyone to remember me as an abandoned, unstable husband. So in the future, when I was accused, no one would believe my words. "You said, accused in the future? Did you know then you would be framed?" "No," I said, "but I knew something was wrong." The next day, when she took all the joint account money, confirmed my intuition. This wasn't a marital crisis. This was a planned evacuation. Jennifer walked me through the entire discovery process. What documents I signed, how Vanessa explained them at the time, why I didn't suspect. I described the shock after discovering the truth, described the process of collecting evidence with Sterling and Sarah. Finally, she asked, "Mr. Mitchell, how do you feel about your ex-wife now?" I looked toward the defendant's seat. Vanessa was looking down at her hands. "I don't hate her," I said, and it was true. Hate requires emotional connection, requires caring. The only feeling I have for her is strangeness. The person I thought I knew never existed. The real her I never knew. I'm just grateful she can't hurt anyone anymore. When the defense attorney cross-examined me, he tried to question my motives, suggesting I might have actually been involved in the crime, just acting. But the evidence was too clear. My salary records, my spending level, my bank statements, everything showed I was an ordinary software engineer with an annual salary of $85,000, no suspicious income sources. And most critically, I was the one who reported it. Why would an accomplice report their own crime? The case lasted 5 months. Finally, on a hot Friday in July, the jury reached a verdict. All defendants, all charges, all guilty. Sentencing was 2 weeks later. I sat in the back of the courtroom, listening to the judge read out the sentences one by one. Vanessa was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison, fined $500,000, and permanently banned from engaging in any financial services or art trading related work. Her father, Victor, was sentenced to 9 years in prison, fined $1,200,000. Dominic was sentenced to 7 years in prison, fined $800,000. Other participants' sentences ranged from 2 to 5 years. After the judge finished reading the last sentence, he struck the gavel once. Court adjourned. Police began taking away the defendants. When Vanessa stood up, her hands were cuffed in front of her. She passed in front of me. This time she didn't look at me. Maybe she knew she wouldn't see anything she wanted to see on my face. Not victory. Not the pleasure of revenge. Just calm and relief. I didn't hate her anymore, because she could no longer define my life. After the case ended, processing the assets took over 2 months. All involved assets were frozen, assessed, stripped. Illegal proceeds were confiscated. Remaining legal assets divided according to normal divorce proceedings. I got back my portion. Not a huge sum, about $180,000, including half the proceeds from selling the house, minus the mortgage, my income accumulated during our marriage, and a few investments. Sarah helped me process all the legal documents. Those companies registered in my name were dissolved. My name was cleared from all suspicious transactions. Stains on my credit record were removed. I became Rowan Mitchell again, software engineer, innocent citizen. "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked me at our last meeting. "Start over," I said. Sterling and I used that money to start a small company. Not some grand startup plan, just a two-person studio helping small and medium businesses do cybersecurity audits and data visualization. We rented 2 desks in a downtown co-working space, $600 monthly rent. I handled product design and data visualization, turning complex security reports into charts clients could understand. Sterling handled technical audits, finding vulnerabilities and risks. We also hired a recent computer science graduate as an intern, 3 days a week, helping us with basic work. The business wasn't huge, first-year revenue about $120,000, split between 2 people. But it was ours, completely clean, honest. Every dollar was earned by ourselves. More importantly, every morning when I woke up, I no longer had that vague, indescribable feeling of unease. Before, I always thought it was work stress or life trivia. Now I understood it was intuition warning me something was wrong. Now that feeling was gone. 6 months later, I moved to Seattle. Leaving was necessary. That city had too many memories. Too many people knew me as the victim in that case. Although media reports protected my privacy, in a small city, news always spreads. I would feel people's eyes in the supermarket, hear whispers in coffee shops. Not malicious, mostly sympathetic, but I didn't need sympathy. What I needed was a place where no one knew my story. Seattle was big, diverse, inclusive. No one cared who you were, where you came from, what your past was. I rented a small apartment in the Capitol Hill area. 1 bedroom, could see a small slice of Puget Sound from the window. Monthly rent $1,400, just right for my current income. The company shifted to remote operation. Sterling stayed in the original city, continuing business development. I handled design and client communication in Seattle. We video conferenced twice a week, flew over to meet when necessary. This was actually more efficient. Every morning I would go running along the lake, watching the sky change from deep blue to golden. I started cooking, learning various recipes from YouTube, discovering I actually quite enjoyed cooking. Weekends I would go to Pike Place Market to buy fresh vegetables and seafood, chat with vendors, gradually becoming a regular at several stalls. I joined an amateur soccer team, training every Wednesday night, games on Saturday. Teammates knew me as Rowan, a software engineer who moved from the East Coast. They didn't know anything else, and I didn't plan to tell them. Life became simple, real. Once, I met a product manager named Emma at a tech meetup. She had just moved to Seattle from the Bay Area, said she was tired of the crazy pace there. We talked for a long time about work, about Seattle, about coffee and hiking trails. She gave me her business card, said, "If you want someone to go hiking with, contact me anytime." I put the card in my wallet, but waited 2 weeks before texting. We went to Rattlesnake Ledge for a hike, 4 hours round trip, beautiful scenery along the way. We talked a lot. She told me about her startup experience in San Francisco. I told her about my company. She asked why I moved to Seattle. I said, wanted a change of environment, start fresh. She nodded, said, I understand, didn't ask more. We met several more times, sometimes coffee, sometimes watching movies together. All very relaxed, no pressure, no expectations. I wasn't ready to start a new relationship yet, probably wouldn't be for a while. But meeting new friends, building new connections, felt good. A year later, on a Saturday afternoon, I received a letter. From a federal prison, sender was Vanessa. I sat on my apartment's small sofa holding the envelope, looking at it for a long time. The envelope was standard craft paper, address handwritten, her handwriting I recognized, very neat, every letter very clear. I opened the envelope. The letter was short, just 1 page, written on prison stationery. Rowan, I know I have no right to write this letter, no right to expect you'll read it. But I still have to write. I won't say sorry because sorry is too light a word for what I did, too cheap. I used you, betrayed you, almost ruined your life. No language can make up for these things. I just want you to know, I regret it. Not because I was caught, not because I have to serve 6 years, but because I realized that among all the people I hurt, you were probably the only one who was genuinely good to me, and I treated that as weakness to exploit. I hope you're doing well. I heard you moved away, started over. That's right, you should do that. You deserve a real life, a life without lies. I don't expect forgiveness. Don't expect a reply. I just want you to know I was wrong.
They.
I read it twice. Then I put the letter back in the envelope, walked to the kitchen, and took out a box of matches. I burned the letter in the sink, watching the paper slowly curl, blacken, turn to ash. I turned on the tap, washed the ashes away, watched them disappear down the drain. I didn't feel any satisfaction, didn't feel any sadness. I just felt this was the final step. She had completely disappeared from my life. Even her words wouldn't remain. That evening, Emma texted asking if I wanted to go to an outdoor concert. I said yes. We sat on the grass in the park, listening to the band play jazz. The sunset painted the sky orange, red, and purple. The air smelled of grass and the salt of the distant bay. Emma told a joke. I laughed, very naturally, from the heart. In that moment I realized I hadn't laughed like this in a long time. Maybe 3 years, maybe longer. In my marriage with Vanessa, I had laughed. But those smiles always carried a tension I wasn't aware of at the time, like playing the role of a happy person rather than actually being happy. Now it was different. Now I could just be Rowan, didn't need to play any role. After the concert ended, we walked along the lake. Emma said she was recently considering changing jobs, asking if I thought she should risk going to a startup or stay at a big company for stability. I gave her some advice, but finally said, actually only you know what's most important to you. You seem to understand these things, she said. You must have gone through something to be so open-minded. Went through some things, I said. Made me understand what's real and what's fake. She nodded, didn't ask more. We walked for a while. Then she said, you know what, I like this about you. You don't overshare, but you don't pretend nothing happened. You're just honestly being yourself. It took me a long time to learn that, I said. We parted at her apartment building. She said, see you next week. I said, see you next week. On the way home, I remembered what Sarah once said. Real revenge is living better than they expected when they tried to destroy you. It's becoming a person they can't touch, can't define, can't destroy. She was right. Vanessa wanted to make me a victim, an abandoned, emotionally out-of-control scapegoat who would ultimately be framed and jailed. But I refused that role. I used the calm and precision she taught me, used my professional skills and my brother's help, used the lawyer's wisdom and law enforcement's power, and flipped the entire plan over. Now she was in prison serving time, and I was here in a new city living a real life, building real relationships, doing real work. I didn't know what the future would bring. Maybe things with Emma would develop into something, maybe not. Maybe the company would succeed, maybe it would fail. Maybe I'd stay in Seattle forever. Maybe I'd move somewhere else. But none of that mattered. Because whatever happened, it was my own choice, my own life. No one was manipulating me, no one was using me, no one could make me a tool or scapegoat anymore. I returned to my apartment, made a cup of tea, stood at the window looking at the lights twinkling on the distant bay. The city sounds came up from below, car sounds, people sounds, the sounds of life. I was good. Not okay. Not recovering. Not slowly getting better. I was genuinely good. For the first time in many years, I felt completely in control of my own life. No secrets, no lies, no hidden threats. Only truth, only the direction I chose for myself. This was the best revenge. Not watching her get arrested, not watching her get sentenced, though those were important too. The best revenge was refusing to let her betrayal define my life. I refused to become the person she wanted me to become. I chose to rebuild, chose to continue, chose to live better. I remembered that anniversary night, standing in the living room, being stared at by 40 people, feeling the world collapsing. If someone had told me then that a year later I would be standing in a Seattle apartment, calmly, truly, happily living, I probably wouldn't have believed it. But I did it. This is my story. Not a perfect victory, not a fairy tale happy ending. Just a story about a person who, after being betrayed, used, almost destroyed, chose to fight back, chose to survive, and ultimately chose to live and live better. If you've listened to this point, if this story made you feel something, please give it a like. Not for me, but for those going through similar things, to let them know things can get better, life can restart, betrayal isn't the end, just a turning point. My favorite part was standing outside the gallery, watching her being taken away. Not because I enjoyed her pain, but because in that moment I knew I won. Not in court, not in bank accounts, but in a more important place. I refused to let her turn me into the victim she wanted. What's your favorite part? Tell me in the comments. Maybe the moment of discovering the truth, maybe when making plans with the lawyer, maybe the final eye contact, maybe the beginning of the new life. Remember one thing. The best revenge is never destroying someone else, but building a self they can't touch. When they try to pull you underwater, you choose to swim to shore, stand up, shake off the mud, and continue on your way. That's real victory. And Rowan Mitchell, did it.
That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.